Welcome to the Paranormal Stakeout radio TV show with Larry Lawson. As a former career law enforcement officer and law enforcement educator, Larry focuses on the use of tried and true law enforcement investigative techniques in conducting paranormal investigations. Despite his experience and training, Larry also keeps an open mind to discussions on topics that deal with evidence that are not quite as physical in nature. Paranormal Stakeout guests are professionals in the field of the paranormal and parapsychology, conducting the investigations and research needed to further the cause of paranormal study. Larry advocates an agenda of standardization of structure and training in the field of paranormal investigation and research for the purpose of one day being able to produce the evidence needed to convince a jury of the existence of the paranormal. Whether it is ghosts, UFOs, unsolved mysteries, hauntings or cryptids, no topic is beyond the investigative reach of Larry Lawson and the Paranormal Stakeout radio TV show team. Now, here is the host of the Paranormal Stakeout radio TV show, Larry Lawson.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm your host, Larry Lawson, coming to you from our headquarters in beautiful Vero Beach, Florida. A couple of housekeeping things I want to get up front. If you're interested in finding out more about myself and my group, you can check us out on our Facebook at paranormalfbi.com and indianriverhauntings.com. You can also check out our YouTube site at Indian River Hauntings on YouTube and find out all the things that our group is involved with in our investigations. One thing I do want to mention is I really like to hear from you, my audience. I'd like to hear questions, thoughts you have on the paranormal, questions, ideas, criticisms. Get a hold of me at ghostguy@paranormalstakeout.org and send in your questions because we'll talk about that at the beginning of each show. So I look forward to hearing from all of you. Have you ever gone to a place and said, I've been here before? Or have you read about folks that have driven down the road and seen a house that they suddenly remember being at? Could they have been there before? Our guest tonight travels that road. Our guest, Georgina Cannon, author, speaker, award-winning hypnosis instructor, a member of the staff at the University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies, relationship coach, NLP master, past life, inner life regression therapist, accredited instructor for the National Guild of Hypnotists, and on the board of International Board of Regression Therapies. Georgina Cannon is also an award-winning author. She has 3 books out there now, Return Again, and The Third Protocol, and her latest book, Your Guide to Self-Discovery. Tonight's going to be a great show, folks. We're going to cover a lot of things. I'd like to introduce my guest, Georgina Cannon.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening. So thank you so much for being here. What a resume. and I don't know if you can do all of that you've done to help people in one lifetime, which I guess can answer part of the regression past lives, can it? Georgina, tell us a little bit about yourself, your book. How long have you been serving people in this capacity?
I started off in England as a journalist. I came to Canada in 1966 and became a journalist again, working for Toronto Life magazine and the Toronto Star, and then opened up a PR company, which was subsequently bought by the world's largest PR company called Burson Marsteller. And I was there for quite a few years, and they promoted me up and up and across, up and down, and I became the managing director of Canada with 4 offices across the country. And I loved it. I mean, it's very heady stuff, except that there was something missing. I knew there was something missing. And plus, I was one of 3 senior women worldwide, and I got a lot of the, this don't bother me, girly type of response. And so I left and looked for something to do. And I studied Reiki. I got my Reiki master, studied color therapy, Gestalt therapy, psychodrama therapy, and happened into hypnosis. And I thought, that's it. That's what drives us. That's where all the answers are, in our subconscious mind. Now, remembering I've grown up in England, so ghosts and spirits are, and fairies at the bottom of the garden are, sure, we don't, we just accept it. It's okay. It's part of who we are. So combining all of that for the past 22 years, I guess, that's what I've been doing. I've been working with clients, teaching hypnosis, past life regression facilitation, life between lives facilitation, and helping people find out their magnificence and who they truly are.
And this work you do in regression therapy, and I'm going to ask you to kind of explain that for my audience in a second. There's a lot of reasons why people become involved in regression therapy or regression hypnosis, but you do it truly to help people find their selves, their true selves, and heal themselves. Have I got that right?
That's right. We all live in patterns, right? It's who we are. It's what we do. How we, everything from how we hold our mug and to how we get out of bed in the morning, how we walk, how we talk, how we use our hands when we talk. We live in patterns, and that includes emotional patterns. So if we have a pattern or 2 or 10 that is not serving us well, maybe we brought it in from a past life. Maybe in other lives we were a victim and we came into this life being a victim. So how do we stop ourselves being a victim if we were born into a family that's addicts or abusive? And as we grow up, we find ourselves always being victimized in our relationships. How do we get ourselves out of that? So one of the ways to do that, first of all, is recognize the pattern. Then you can do something about it. Then you can move from victim to hero in your life. Then you can actually make the change. Because until you know what it is you have to change, you can't really do anything. You don't know what you're looking for. So that's the work.
So help me with this. And regression therapy, explain that to my audience so they have a clear understanding where you're at.
Sure. I use hypnosis and put people into trance or lead people into trance, and they go back and they follow the soul. The soul takes you where it thinks you need to go. So they end up in another lifetime. They could be a different gender, different color, and certainly from a different country. And we go through 2 or sometimes 3 lives in a session, and they learn what was going on in that life and whether it was successful or not successful. And we see a pattern happening. So that's past life regression. Then once they've done that, if they so choose, we can do the life between lives, which is the space between lifetimes. It's where the soul goes home. So that's where they meet their soul circle. They open or go into the Akashic records, which is the history of the soul and the lifetimes and learnings. They go in the laboratory to learn how to manage their energy differently, maybe. Then they go in front of the council, the wise elders, who are not judgmental. They are encouraging, and they confirm or they answer questions about your current life so your soul can grow. And the most important part, which I think is sort of fun, is after the council, they go to the place of life choice. So they get to choose the body, and they find out why they've come in as a male or female or transgender or whatever in this particular color, because they have to fulfill their soul purpose. So they find out their soul purpose and why they chose that particular body to come into in this life. So for people who blame their parents for everything, it's a good understanding that in fact they chose this body and these parents so they could learn something.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing is you are saying that we're going to keep doing this till we get it right almost.
Yes.
We're continuing to learn. Now, I've spoken to other mediums, psychics, folks that deal in the spiritual realm, and they've talked about almost like a collective conscious,
Yes.
where everything comes and goes from. Is that what you're describing?
The collective, from my understanding, the collective consciousness is where all information is stored. And that's where mediums and psychics pull their information from. But that is also where, for instance, if you get a sudden urge to call someone you haven't spoken to for a while, and suddenly the phone buzzes and it's them on the other end of the phone, you've connected through the superconscious to them. You don't even realize it.
So that also kind of ties into a belief that I've come to have over the years, synchronicity, that there is no coincidence. Everything is connected, and then there's a purpose. Would that fit into your philosophy at all?
Sort of, kind of. I think everything's connected anyway. Well, like a tapestry, whether it's us and the trees or us and the animals or us and the earth we tread on. Everything's connected. We are all energy, and energy interconnects. And I see us like a tapestry that is woven together. And that's why if one is rotten or one is damaged, it damages all of us at some level.
Mm-hmm. Does this tie in at all also? And I just kind of lost my train of thought there. My computer glitched on me a tad there. And dimensions, or let me back up. Let me back up a little bit there. Is there a finite number of times that a soul can regenerate to come back? Or
I honestly don't know that, but I do know. Well, I don't know. I believe.
Okay.
It's very different. That not only do we have life on this earth, of course, the soul can come from other planets and other dimensions. And when I explain it to my clients, I tell them I believe this is where we see spirits and ghosts. It's almost like those billboards that turn around, and every time they turn around a bit, you get another picture. So that's what the dimensions are. So there's no real such thing as time. So when you hear people say time is all now, that's what they mean. Other things are happening in different dimensions. It's the same with interplanetary travel. It's the same with everything.
So Einstein had it right with different dimensions, so to speak.
I wouldn't argue with Einstein.
No, I wouldn't. Can souls transfer not only between different humans but also animals? Is that possible?
Oh, yes. And when they do that in a past life, it's because that particular shape or animal that they've taken on, the soul's taken on, is there to teach them something. As an example, one of my clients was a well-known naturopathic doctor. And when I was working with him, I expected him to tell me what he was wearing on his feet and what he was wearing on his clothes. And he kept saying, I don't have any feet. I just don't have any feet. And I'm thinking, oh, great. Now what? Maybe he's, damaged in some way. It might be a child that's been brutalized or whatever. And he said, but I'm very hungry and I'm looking at that bird and I'm inching my way towards it. And it suddenly dawned on me that this is not what we call human. So I said, if you had to have a name, what would you say you are? And he said, I'm a snake. As if like, what's the matter with you? Don't you know? And when we went through the process, including the death. Yeah.
I hate to interrupt you, but we've got a first break coming up, Georgina. Okay. So folks, stay with us. Fascinating discussion. Stay with us. We'll be back right after these messages.
Okay.
Paranormal Stakeout.
NASA has confirmed that they have evidence of life beyond Earth.
This discovery is confirmed.
Well, let's see, we've had visitors again. And probably worth mentioning.
I filmed 16 minutes on March 5th, 1994, 16 minutes of broad daylight UFO activity.
The other side, the spirit realm, is a parallel dimension which runs, which coexists with ours. And what spirits are doing is they're sending waves of frequency from that dimension to ours.
The government instituted the truth embargo. The government poured disinformation and misinformation into this field, encouraging hoaxes and any other foolishness. It created a truth vacuum that naturally was going to be filled with theories and assertions and other stuff.
The oil oligarchs and the banks and the people who are making decisions that are leading us down the wrong path.
They've undermined the research, intimidated and threatened witnesses. The government is responsible for the fact that the status of this issue is not resolved.
I'm Rob McConnell, host and executive producer of the X Zone radio show. Now we are set to bring the amazing world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology to broadcast TV and online video with the development of X Zone TV. X Zone TV will now bring our loyal listeners and new viewers face to face with the most controversial and well-known personalities in the field of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology. From scientists to theorists, astronauts to adventurers, celebrities, pundits, advocates, and naysayers, they'll all join our rapid-fire TV broadcast, interactive discussion, and debate. Interest in the paranormal and parapsychology has never been more intense, and it continues to grow. The truth is out there, so take a deep breath and join us as we step into the light. For more information about X Zone TV, please contact me, Rob McConnell, directly at these coordinates, Rob McConnell at xzonetv.com.
And we are back with my guest tonight. I'm the host, back with my guest, Georgina Cannon, hypnotherapist and healer, I guess is a great way to put it with you. Now, you were in the process of finishing a story when I had to interrupt you for the break.
That's okay. The snake kept climbing. It's all right.
So you were working with an individual. You were working back into his past life, and you found out he was an animal.
Yes.
That was stalking another animal. Go ahead and finish that story.
Okay, so he turned into this snake, and he was climbing up the tree he was hungry, and he saw this bird on a branch. When we did the leaving of that life, one of the questions I always ask is, what is the purpose of that life? And he went still in hypnosis, and the answer came that I had to learn to let go of my skin to grow and relearn. And for him, that was pretty profound because he was pretty rigid in his thinking and wouldn't look at new understandings or new learnings about anything, including relationships, which is one of the reasons he spoke to me and came to me. So that was quite a shock. So he said, do you really think that means something? And I said, well, I didn't make it up. And I doubt very much that you would have made it up. So maybe you do have to let go of that skin that you put on and uncover what's underneath and find out what really you need to learn or to have or to be or to do so that you can have healthy, loving, kind, generous relationships.
The regression therapy, regression hypnosis that you use, success rate with your clients, are you able to help most of them, do you think?
Most people. There are two sorts of people that it doesn't work with. One is that they get so excited that they keep sort of opening their eyes and saying, am I there yet? You know, it's like a kid at the back of the car. Or they've been up all night, they can't wait, and they're excited. Actually, there's three types. And the other one is somebody who just can't be hypnotized, so they won't allow themselves to be hypnotized. Mm-hmm. And the third is the one that's determined to be something, determined to drive it the way they want to drive it and go where they want to go. I had a young woman who came in who was determined that she was Cleopatra. So, of course, when I put her into hypnosis, she went immediately into this film scenario. And I said to her, where are you? She said, well, I'm in the barge with my ladies in waiting. And she suddenly became very royal. And when I started to ask her questions about where she was going, was to see my lover, of course. Do you marry your lover? And she had no idea of the history. And of course, I'm a history buff. So she didn't know she had more than one lover. And she had no idea that she'd married her brother and Caesar and all of that.
So she was a fake.
She was faking it. And when she came out, she said to me, what do you think? And I said, I think because you admire Cleopatra, you were sort of modeling her. You wanted to be her.
Mm-hmm.
And I just left it at that. Yeah, so most people can go into it.
Well, this leads to a tough question. Being a cop, I ask these kinds of questions.
Fun.
How do you know this is real? How do you know about the collective consciousness, which is my term, not yours, but how do you know that it's real?
Well,
what evidence have you uncovered?
Yeah, well, I can give you two answers to that. First of all, most past lives are pretty ordinary. So if you were going to make something up, you'd make up something much more exciting, much more, more royal, more grand.
Okay.
A lot of people are very ordinary people, farmers or whatever. But secondly, the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Company, a few years ago, came into my clinic and filmed a series on past life regression.
Mm-hmm.
And they insisted to bring the people in. They wouldn't let me interview them or anything. So I had 30 people. And out of those 30 people, I think it was 20 that went into a past life of some sort with cameras on them and sound equipment and everything. Of those, there were 10 that had good stories, which they verified with researchers.
Okay.
We got addresses, names, everything, dates.
Historical research.
Yeah. And then of those 10, 3 made it on screen because they were good stories.
Yeah. So you've been able to trace their back history.
Yes.
To historical fact. Very, very important. Okay.
Yes. And
now,
sometimes they give me dates. Like they'll say, well, I was a Jesuit priest and I was put on a ship and I had to go to this island and all I had was my cross, my Bible, and I had to make the natives Christian. Now we know that happened, but that person didn't necessarily know it. And I got the name of the ship and everything.
Oh, yeah. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I got to ask this. What's the most significant person you've uncovered during these sessions that you can tell? I mean, I don't want to breach any confidentiality, but
there's been no one. Oh, yes, there has. An artist came to me years ago saying that she was stuck and she couldn't create anymore. She was a visual artist. And she went back and she was on stage. And I said to her, oh, you're on stage. What is your name? She said, my name is Anna. I said, oh, and what do you do on stage? I'm a dancer. She got very sort of irritated with me.
Mm-hmm.
And cut a long story short, it turned out to be Anna Pavlova. And she gave me actual facts. And she gave me the names of her manager in Europe and in Russia, her agent in Europe that made her travel everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so shaken when she came out of hypnosis, because she didn't know anything about ballet at all. When she went home, she and her husband went to the library and they looked up Anna Pavlova. And when they went to Paris the following year, they went to the place where she's buried in the center of Paris and honored that tomb. Yeah, that's the most famous person I've had.
And that's interesting. And the historical research is vital.
Yes.
I'm familiar. One story I'm familiar with was a young boy who remembered his past life as a pilot during the Second World War.
Yes.
And they were able to trace that history.
Yes.
So that was amazing. How have you ever experienced regression therapy? Have you ever yourself gone through that?
Oh, yes, of course. I wouldn't do anything to a client I haven't done to myself.
Okay.
That's not fair. Yes, and I got rid of my migraines through hypnosis. through this process. I was taken back and found myself as an old crone living in a cave just outside a village, and I was so old and poor that I smelled rotten like garbage. I smelled myself before I saw myself, and my job was to go down to the village and help the women give birth.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. When they remembered, they paid me with food. When they didn't remember, I just went without food. I was close to starvation most of the time. One day I was called down to the village, cut a very long story short. The baby died. It was breech, and the baby died, and the woman bled out. So the people helping me left, and I was just there by myself with the two bodies. So I had to, with my hands, dig in the village, in the field, and bury the two bodies. I dragged myself up to my cave and fell fast asleep out of exhaustion. The next thing I know is I'm being awakened brutally. I'm being kicked. And I wake up, and there's this drunken man standing over me telling me I'd killed his son and his wife. And he was yelling at me and kicking me. And then he picked up this big rock and smashed it on the side of my head right here where I used to get my migraines. And I died. I died instantly. And he sort of stormed out there and walked away, I guess. When the facilitator brought me back and did all the healing, and we were both shaken because it was so violent, I waited for my next migraine. I've never had one since.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and that was 2001. That was when I was learning past life regression from Henry Bolduc. Yeah.
Fascinating. How are you able to discern the different levels of dimensions, different levels of life? How were you able to come to the conclusion that that's what was happening? Does that make sense, the question? How were you able to prove to yourself that it occurred?
Even if it's not real, even if it's a metaphor that the mind is making up for you, the mind or the soul is trying to tell you something that you need to learn. So when I first started this, the media used to say to me, it's bunkum. How you're making this up, people make it up. And I said, what difference does it make? As long as they get the lesson and it's life-changing for them, they get an aha, they get a revelation that tells them that this is the way to go, or let that go and start with this, then what difference does it make? I know now from CBC, thank you CBC, that you can prove it. It's not just my word. It's been proven. And not only me, but other facilitators too worldwide.
I think there's ample evidence out there of folks. I mean, we talk about deja vu, as I mentioned during my opening, that you've been here before, you've seen this before, you've experienced this before. So I agree. I guess what I'm trying to get at is there a way to quantify this? Is there a way that we can physically show this to someone? Yes, you've got the word, the histories that you've been able to prove, but Georgina, there's always somebody out there that's going to say, hogwash, you got it off the internet or something.
And I say, fine. I say, fine.
Okay.
No, really, I do. I say, fine. It's fine that you don't believe it. It's perfectly okay. You're entitled to not believe. But I know that energy exists. And I say to them sometimes, have you ever walked into a room of people, maybe you know or you don't know, but there's been a fight in there before. They've had an argument, and they're fine. On the surface, they're fine, but you feel it. That's energy. I get calls sometimes from real estate agents who have a hard time selling houses. And I go into the house because there's an energy there that doesn't want to leave. Or doesn't want, and you can't quantify that except that after I talk with it with my pendulum. Where's my pendulum? Either talk with my pendulum or with my heart and mouth and say, time to go home. Let's get you into the light. You've got to go.
Speaking of time, we're about ready for our next break. This is going so fast. So stay with us, folks. Okay. Great conversation with Georgina Cannon. Stay with us. We'll be back right after these messages.
Okay.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com.
simultv.com.
And we are back on Paranormal Stakeout with my guest tonight, Georgina Cannon. What a fascinating discussion. You've helped so many people. In fact, it's my understanding you have helped at least one famous person, if memory serves. Is that correct?
Oh, at least one.
At least one. And that is, can you share that or?
No.
No. Okay, that's fine.
No.
But there's just so many people that you've helped. And I just find this entire topic of regression hypnosis interesting. I find the past life topic extremely interesting. And sometimes we actually remember, we have glimpses of our past life in this life. How come we don't remember it right up front? I'm assuming there's a mechanism that just maybe blanks out.
Well, I think what happens is we see what we look for. So, and by the way, I want to make it very clear. I don't believe in the woo-woo. I think this is just a tool. I think it's just a tool to help people live their life in the fullest, most joyous, healthy way possible. We see what we look for. So if we grow up in an environment that's very pragmatic, very practical, especially if there's not a lot of money around, and the only thing you can focus on is food and shelter, the hierarchy of needs. Or you grow up in a family that's purely academic, and there's no room for anything other than what is rigidly accepted, then you don't look for it. You don't even see it there. And it becomes something that others do. It's an others thing. It's like somebody who maybe is a concert pianist. Well, other people play the piano. That's fine. I'll listen to it if I want to, but I'm busy doing other things. I think that's what happens. Okay. But children remember past lives. Carol Bowman, who has written many books on children in past lives, a lot of kids remember before the age of 7, they'll say to their parent, I had another mother, or I used to live in that house, or before my skin was a different color. And parents will say, oh, yes, dear, yes, dear, of course you did. I had a client who told me that when he was very young, he used to play in his garden, and something would come from the sky and take him on a ride. He lived in Miami, and come from the sky and take him on a ride around the coast. And it was an ET taking him for a ride around the coast. And he went in and told his mom, and his mom said, sure, thinking he had an imaginary friend.
Sure. Yeah. And you've actually had a number of clients that have come to you talking or discussing contact with other beings.
Yes, yes, indeed. And I don't personally work with that
Right.
anymore. I refer them to a colleague who does great work with
Mhm.
abductees, as it's
Mhm.
called. But yes, people who have either been taken while they're asleep or volunteered or out of pure curiosity offered themselves just to take the journey. There's a lot of fear around that whole idea of being taken. But what people don't realize is sometimes we ask to go on the journey. We let it be known that we're curious. We let it
Mhm.
be known that, sure, I'm here if you want. Take me. Yeah.
It's allowing those things in.
Yes.
Now, our brain, from my limited uh, knowledge, has that tendency when something traumatic happens, it blocks it out. And I think that's another area where your therapy also comes in handy when the pain or the trauma of an event blocks it out, then you can help them relive it.
Remember, yes. The only time we can't do that is if they have been drugged so that it shuts down the memory.
Mhm.
We know the military does that, and we know that other people can do that. Or alcohol. Alcohol can shut down the memory as well. People who are literally dead drunk, who get very, very drunk, shuts down the memory. But the subconscious mind remembers everything that ever happened other than those two situations.
Mhm.
So if I get a client who comes and says, I met this great girl at a party and I know she gave me her number, but I was drinking so much I forgot it. Can you help me remember it? The answer is no, I can't. But when the
Okay.
bank manager comes and says, we've got a new number on the safe and I left the piece of paper behind in the vault, can you help me remember it? The answer is very likely. Yes, we can.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, during these sessions, and you're dealing with somebody that possibly has a past life, have you ever run into situations where the person has had a conscious memory of that past life and it's caused them any type of uh, anxiety or confusion or upset them?
Sometimes people will come and say, I don't know why, but I just got a new job and my boss, there's something about him. I get a feeling in the gut of my stomach. And it's not just intuition. I know I've known him before and I just know I know him. And something, it's not good.
Mhm.
So that could be a past life. Not always, but it could be.
Mhm.
Something like that.
Anything that's caused folks to come to you in dire need, suicidal, if you will.
Suicide, I refer out to a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychiatrist, but they've come to me in need. I had a wonderful client who came to me many years ago now, who told me, she said she had this secret that nobody knew except her husband and her doctor.
Mm-hmm.
She was found on a park bench many years ago, and she couldn't remember who she was. And this woman came and saw her sitting there crying, took her home. They phoned the police. They phoned everybody, and there'd been no accidents, nothing. She had some scratches on her body, but nothing. She got a job at the local dance class, being a teacher. She learned she loved to dance, and there she met her husband. She told him the story, and he used everything he knew. This is before the internet to trace her down. They used Interpol. They tried everything. They couldn't find out who she was. Cut a long story short, she came to see me because she was having surgery and she wanted to know. First of all, she wanted to feel safe, but she wanted to know if there's any way she could find out who she was before she had the surgery, just in case. So I regressed her back to age 12, and she suddenly brought herself out of hypnosis, and she was shaking. She said, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. So we stopped it, and I put her back into hypnosis and got her ready for surgery. A few weeks later, she came back and said that hypnosis really helped the healing. She had a pacemaker put in, if I remember rightly. And then she said, I really want to do this now. So I took her back into the womb. And when she got into the womb, suddenly she brought herself out of hypnosis. She said, I know who I am. And I know I've got 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and I know my name. And she ran out into the reception area and she said, I know my name and everything. So she and her husband left. And a few weeks later, I got a letter saying, Georgina, we're sending you this. They found that her family in the States and in London.
Oh,
and
my.
there was an email from her sister saying, we've been looking for you for years, and we're coming to Toronto to meet you. And they invited me to lunch, and they were like bookends. They both looked like each other. It was uncanny. Yes. So that was lovely.
And that's the type of story that makes all of this worthwhile.
Oh, it's all worthwhile, I tell you.
Now, have you ever had to deal with somebody who had an accident, perhaps, and were unconscious and had amnesia from that accident?
No, I haven't, and I don't know that I would take that again because I don't know about brain damage. I'm very cautious and stay very strictly within the guidelines about what I can and cannot achieve and do. I think it's only appropriate for the client. I suggest that they look for a psychiatrist or a psychologist that does hypnosis, because they will know. They will have the x-rays in front of them and they will look and see if there's any brain damage. I don't touch that.
Okay. Want to go back just a little bit. Now, I want to talk about your books here in just a few minutes. We're coming up on our next break, and I want to give you a full section to talk about your wonderful books. But I'm a paranormal guy. They call me the ghost guy. How do we connect what you're experiencing with people? And you mentioned this a little bit earlier. How do we connect people seeing the manifestation of an apparition with a past life? Is there a connection there at all?
Well, I believe, and again, it's only my belief, I believe that ghosts and spirits are lost souls who haven't found their way home. Sometimes they attach to live bodies like you and I, and people that are moving around in 3 dimension. Other times they just get lost. So they need to find their way home. And they are souls. They are energy that are just there, that want to go home. They don't know what to do. A lot of times, particularly if you walk across memorial grounds or battlegrounds, you feel the energy there. Those are souls that died like that, and the soul is lost. In 9/11, when all that happened, all those souls, not many of them found their way home. There are a lot of people like me who went to help them find their way home. It's like, and the soul got lost and didn't know where to go.
So when we start talking about souls coming back, reincarnation, past lives, these are souls that weren't given that opportunity because of tragedy, and that's why they're floating around? Is that
No. There's 2 different things. They're floating around. People come back from the interlife.
Right.
Okay. But the ones that are floating around, so to speak, haven't gone into the interlife yet. They may have attached. For instance, a lot of palliative care nurses sometimes get attachments of souls of people who've died they've been taken care of. So we have to release them and send them home, or ask them to go home and go to the light.
But have these souls had another life before?
Yes.
And they just can't get back to restart it? Is that how I'm reading it?
Can't get back either because they died unwillingly or they died suddenly. And they sometimes, occasionally, they don't even know they're dead. They don't understand why they can't connect.
So they're not even able to reach that next plane to find out where they have to go next.
That's right.
Okay. How do you, I have a place, for example, that I work with. There's a lot of young kids there in spirit. Never a tragedy there. Why would I have that? How would that connect?
To what?
To this. Spirits of children being in this facility, but there's never been a death there.
Because they may be attracted to that place. There may be something there. Was it a school or was it a playground? Was it, that's why.
Just a question. Hey, we got to take our next break here, Georgina. When we come back, I want you to share these wonderful books that you've written. We'll talk about them right after this break. Folks, stay with me. Larry Lawson on Paranormal Stakeout. We'll be right back.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
And we are back on Paranormal Stakeout. Catching a little caffeine there, Georgina. That's great. Georgina, you've helped so many people with your work over the last 20 some odd years. You've written some books. Want to talk about them for a second, but folks, I want to remind you also to check me out at IndianRiverHauntings.com and ParanormalFBI.com. Don't forget, send your questions and thoughts to me at ghostguy@paranormalstakeout.org, because we want to get your opinions and your thoughts on the show with us. And Georgina, can you tell the folks how to get a hold of you?
Yes, and by the way, your listeners should know that I give a free meditation every Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. All they have to do is to contact me or through the website, contact Elle, my assistant, and get the Zoom link. And it's there every Friday. There's different meditation every Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. Yeah.
And what are those websites?
www.georginacannon.com.
Very easy. Great. So folks, check that out. So you've written 3 books. The first one, Return Again, followed by The Third Protocol, which there we go. And Return Again. And then your latest one.
Yes.
Our Guide to Self-Discovery.
Yes. This is fun. I suddenly realized one day that since time began, people have always wanted to find out more about themselves. You know, the ancients used to cast stones or read smoke or whatever. And today we go to astrologers, we go to hand readers, we go to numerologists, we go to people who help us find our angels. So I decided to write a book and encourage other experts from around the field, around the world, because I know so many of them, to write a chapter. So the book literally is your guide to self-discovery, and every chapter is written by somebody expert in their field. For instance, numerology, David Shepard from England has written that chapter. Kelly Sullivan Waldron has written about your dreams. And your hands, reading your hands, is Lisa Greenfield, and she writes for Om magazine. Kathy Beale also is astrology, and so on and so on. There's Grandmother Crow wrote about how to find your animal guide. There's someone writing about Akashic Records. Paulette Sherman's writing about archetypes, and the names go on. And these are all names people who are interested in the paranormal will recognize, including Maureen St. Germain, who wrote about Akashic Records, and Mary Ligon about NLP, and on. And I write about the karma and past life regression. And at the end of each chapter, you write down, because they teach you how to do this for yourself. They give you, it's a primer. And you write down what you've learned at that chapter. And at the end of the book, you get to introduce yourself to your new self, because you found out more about yourself than you knew before. For instance, if you know about birth order, there's a chapter on birth order. So if you were a second child or a third child or the eldest, so you write down what you just learned that could be possible for you to follow through. It gives you more tools for your living, gives you more understanding for yourself and what's possible.
Self-discovery.
Yeah, self-discovery.
That's it in a nutshell. Wow. And what about your other books?
My other books, the first one was Return Again, which is all about past lives and the interlife. And in it, there's a script that you can read yourself that you can find your soul group. So you can take yourself into your soul group. The one I wrote 2.5, 3 years ago is about relationships. It's called the Third Circle Protocol.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about relationships, all of them, first of all, with yourself, because this is the most important one, because unless you feel comfortable in your skin, you're not going to feel comfortable really with other people. So you have to know about a relationship with yourself. And it talks about relationships with everybody, your employees, your employers, the uncle, the unloved ones in your life, your siblings, your parents, your aging parents. Everyone is a different chapter. And there's a lot of women's groups using this book for self-esteem. It's really gratifying. Yeah.
So your work just centers around knowing yourself better so that you can improve your life. And I think that's fascinating. I want to go back to the last book, Self-Discovery, for just a second. What would you say are the three most important chapters of that book?
Birth order.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing about where you stand, certainly past lives, because I'm a little biased that way.
Okay.
People who are interested in angels, it tells you how to meet your angels.
Interesting.
Because people talk about it, but they don't know how to connect or their guide. And this tells you how to do that. And how to, what your aura says, our energy field.
Mm-hmm.
How to look at your aura and see it, and what color is it, and what do those colors mean. That's another chapter that people seem to be loving in this book. Yeah. But also people dream, and they come in and they say, I had this dream and it's a recurring dream. What do you think it means? And I say, I'm not a dream expert. Carl Jung is, and so is Kelly Sullivan Waldron. And she wrote the chapter in this book about dreams. So it all helps. It's like an archaeological dig. It's like a personal archaeological dig.
Okay. I want to go back to that angel comment you just made there and our connection to angels. What is the connection with angels? There are many people that are, follow that belief very strongly. What is an angel to us in the context of the different lives that we live? Does that make sense?
Yes. I believe, and again, it's only my belief system. I believe angels or guides are the same thing.
Okay.
I believe that they travel with us from lifetime to lifetime as long as they are needed for a certain job, if you like. And then when we graduate or learn the lesson, we get a different angel to teach us, help us through some troubled times, which we have to go through to learn another lesson. So we don't have one from the beginning of time through to now. They change according to what the soul believes we need.
Oh, okay.
It's like our own personal coach, if you like, at a much higher level.
This entire, your being, what you do for folks, it's been a journey for you too, hasn't it?
Oh, totally. Yes, absolutely. When I wake up sometimes and I feel tired, or the minute I start work, I get energized. The minute I start teaching, or I'm working with a client and I see that light go on their eyes, that aha. Because my belief system is that everyone has the answer. I don't have the answer. I help them uncover their answer for themselves. They know the answer. And it's just that it's covered over with dust and noise or fear, because it means responsibility. If you're not a victim anymore, you've got to do something. So, that it energizes me.
Well, it energizes you. And I've spent a lot of my career teaching at the collegiate level. And I've always felt that every time I taught, and I would tell my students this, I hope to learn as much from them as they're going to learn from me. In that context, Georgina, what are the important lessons that you've learned from your study and your helping folks? What are some of the most important lessons you've learned about yourself and that have helped you?
The big one, and I try to pass this on, although not everybody, some people listen, they don't hear it, is you have to meet the other person where they are at, not where you are at. So you have to go in to meet them here, not like this. Because if you go in with the knowledge and the background and the training that you have, and you overtalk or you assume, you're making them feel less than. Or they'll take the surface of what you're saying and they won't take it inside. And it won't be effective. But what you don't want to do is to make people feel stupid. It doesn't matter whether you look smart or not. The whole point is that they have to feel smart. They have to feel that they've changed. It's not about us, me. It's about them. And that's one of the hardest things I have to teach my students, actually, because everybody thinks they know what the client should do.
Yes. And how has that helped? How has that helped you personally, Georgina? Because you help others. You're more successful helping others when you better yourself.
Yeah. Well, it's helped me become more thoughtful and hopefully more allowing, because in the corporate world, I was pretty judgmental.
I've been there.
Yeah, I used to have this dream. I tell my husband, I have a dream that one day I'm going to be president of this company and I'm going to have a desk that sits right at the far end of a room, and outside my door will be 2 stone lions, and people have to come through my door and walk across and to speak to me. Now, that was then. There's no way I'd do that now. I don't even have a desk in my office when I have an office. So people can, it's much more open. So we change. We become understanding that we are only a vessel. We're only the conduit through which this information flows. I don't do it. It is being given through me. I don't want to make it sound too woo-woo, but it truly is. There are times I don't know what to say to the client, and I sit there and I say, please help. And I get the answer very clearly through my right ear. Yeah.
How do you have any idea how many transitions you've made?
No idea. I only know I've only done 3 myself, but I have no idea. No.
Well, I think we're all developing, we're all evolving, and I don't think that there's any question that the work that you're doing is helping people evolve to that next step. In our last minute or so together, what would you like to tell my audience? What would you tell them to inspire them and to help them?
You are so much more than you seem. And it's so important to connect with everything around you. And even when you're giving money to a homeless person, look them in the eye and connect with them. When you look at a tree or look at a flower, connect with it. I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but if you really do that, it changes the whole rhythm of your being. You suddenly realize that your power isn't from you, it's from the collective.
Understood. And with that, great words of wisdom. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Georgina. Georgina Cannon, folks, thank you for joining us yourselves. Thank you for being with us. See you next week, and stay safe. And until then, we'll see you on the other side. Have a good night.